What's up, YouTubers? So, brand new video for you today. Over this past week, I've been contemplating what other videos I could do as part of a tribute to Mark Calloway, aka The Undertaker. Now, I had a word with my buddy Ryan Martin, PT, and we are both old school wrestling fans, and I said to him, Ryan, you know, what could I do to make the next video that I do an amazing tribute to The Undertaker? And he said to me, well, you know a lot about WrestleMania, so why don't you do it on The Streak? I was like, yeah, I could do that. I could do that, no problem. So what this video is going to be, this video is going to be cut into 3 parts. Part 1, what you're watching right now, is going to be the first 10 matches of The Streak, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of detail of how it started and where it ended up in the first 10. And then the next set, and the next 10, it's going to be where it went and beyond. And then the final part is going to be how it sort of ended, and the highs and the lows, and my overall opinion on the whole thing. So sit back, take a deep breath. We're gonna be here for a little while and just enjoy this, okay? So let's start at the top. We're going to start at where it all began in 1991 at WrestleMania 7. Now, Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, had just come into the WWF in 1990 at the Survivor Series as part of the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase's $1 Million team, and they were going against the Dream Team of Dusty Rhodes and his team. So The Undertaker was getting brought in as a mystery partner. Nobody knew who he was at the time. So $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase announces him. The Undertaker comes out, and straight away you see a monster. Okay, you see a monster of a man, and over the next few months, he just went through everybody that was put in front of him. No disrespect to the guys at the start, but it was jobber after jobber after jobber. Those that don't know what a jobber is a local pro wrestler that they've hired to, their sort of enhancement talent to the superstars. They were done at TV tape-ins and other wrestling shows. So, going into WrestleMania 7. Now, back in the day, to let you understand, WrestleMania, unless it was the top maybe 3, 4, 5 matches that were real storyline matches, i.e. the World Championship or the Intercontinental Championship or the Tag Team Championships, you know, they were the key rivalries. Those were set in stone that they were going to be part of WrestleMania. Whereas the undercard matches, they were just sort of thrown together just for exhibition matches. And that's what The Undertaker's first match was. The Undertaker's first match was just an exhibition match, as it were. And it started off against the original Phenom that he was christened. The original Phenom was actually Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Now, unfortunately for him, he was like the sacrificial lamb to the Undertaker, and the Undertaker had beaten Jimmy Snuka within minutes. I don't even think he even hit the 8-10 minute mark of the whole match. The Undertaker went through him like a hot knife through butter, and unfortunately for him, Jimmy Snuka was the first victim of the streak. And during this time also, the Undertaker was brought in by Brother Love at the Survivor Series, and then going forward, much more forward on the journey that the Undertaker had, Paul Bearer was put with him, and that just, they molded together a lot better than what Brother Love did with the Undertaker. And Paul Bearer was on the journey of his life with the Undertaker. And now we're finishing WrestleMania 7, okay? And then we're going a year later into WrestleMania 8 in 1992 at the Hoosier Dome. Big arena at the time, massive arena. And this match was actually a rivalry. This wasn't just an exhibition put together for the event. This was a rivalry. This rivalry was against Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, coincidentally enough, The Undertaker has said this in interview segments, that the person that sort of taught him of how to become who he was at the start was actually Jake the Snake Roberts. So Jake Roberts was a mentor to The Undertaker. But a month or so prior to WrestleMania, the Undertaker was sort of being a heel, and then all of a sudden they turned him face into a good guy. But he was still had that intimidating fear. I mean, if you go back at the start, you could see that kids were afraid of him. They were afraid of The Undertaker. You know, you saw that fear in their faces. Even their parents were afraid of him. But that was the impact that The Undertaker and the WWF were going for. So, getting back to what we were talking about Jake the Snake Roberts. So, Jake the Snake was ending his feud with Randy Savage, and The Undertaker stepped in to help out Randy Savage for some reason. And that catapulted to the rivalry that Jake the Snake Roberts and The Undertaker would have. And going into their match at WrestleMania 8, The Undertaker started getting the famous pop that he would be getting later on in his career. Anybody that knows anything about they kind of pops, they're called the Road Warrior pop. As soon as the Road Warriors would enter the arena, no matter where they were in the world, check out SummerSlam 92, you'll hear a massive crowd reaction from there. And that's at WrestleMania 8, The Undertaker got one of them. That was the start of his major pops. So they worked through the match, and Jake the Snake Roberts gave The Undertaker quite a few short arm clotheslines. They were sort of Jake Roberts' trademark moves to set up for the DDT. Now, Jake the Snake Roberts hit The Undertaker with a DDT. In fact, I think he even hit him with two. And The Undertaker got up. Now, back in the day, nobody got up from a DDT. When Jake the Snake Roberts hit you with a DDT, you were down for the count, okay? But The Undertaker got up. The Undertaker got up, and ended up giving Jake the Snake Roberts a tombstone pile driver outside the ring on the mats. Luckily, they weren't in the WCW stage of no mats. Otherwise, The Undertaker could have broken Jake Roberts' neck. So, tombstoned him outside the ring, put him back in the ring, pinned him, and that stopped Jake Roberts right there. And after the match, Gorilla Monsoon, actually, it's quite famous now, the saying, he turned to Bobby Heenan, who was doing commentary with him. He said, "How on earth are you going to stop this guy?" Meaning The Undertaker. And how so very right he was. Because yes, WrestleMania 7 was the starting point, but WrestleMania 8 was the launching pad to just put The Undertaker up that way. Now, going into WrestleMania 9 in 1993, he was going against El Gigante, aka the Giant Gonzalez. This guy was a little bit bigger than The Undertaker. He was brought in from WCW, and he was brought in at the Royal Rumble. Strangely enough, did not enter the Royal Rumble at all, actually. But he was brought in at the Royal Rumble, and he demolished The Undertaker. For the first time since The Undertaker debuted in 1990, somebody had actually demolished him. And the whole build-up going into WrestleMania was the Giant Gonzalez was just going through everybody until he got to The Undertaker. They eventually got to WrestleMania 9 in Las Vegas, and The Undertaker came in on an old school Roman chariot, which at the time was kind of intimidating. They had a black bird with him. It was all mystique and everything like that. So that was the start of The Undertaker's crazy entrances at WrestleMania. But no disrespect to both guys. The match was awful. Absolutely awful. It was painful to watch. The Giant Gonzalez was very, very stiff. And The Undertaker worked with him as best he could, but it just wasn't working. It was kind of a what the F kind of match. It was terrible. Not one of The Undertaker's best matches, and I'm not saying all his matches are 5-star matches, okay, at the start of WrestleMania. But it's just it was just awful match. And then going into but before I go anywhere else, sorry, The Undertaker did win that match. He won it by disqualification, actually, because they introduced a rag in chloroform and made The Undertaker pass out. So that is an illegal object, apparently, and so that disqualified the Giant Gonzalez. So going over the summer, they had a feud that went all the way up to SummerSlam, and The Undertaker had won that rivalry, and going into ending 93 and entering 94, he actually ended up having a feud with the mighty Yokozuna over the WWF Championship. But at the Royal Rumble 94, The Undertaker was defeated. But the reason why he was defeated is because during his time with in 92 and 93, he was getting injured, and he asked for time off. So the best way to do that was for The Undertaker to be defeated and take some time off. So we're in 94 now, going into WrestleMania 10. So The Undertaker has had a break, okay? Had a complete break. So there is no WrestleMania match. I'm sure The Undertaker was at WrestleMania 10, but maybe behind the scenes because Paul Bearer was. Paul Bearer was in and around WrestleMania, but The Undertaker wasn't. So The Undertaker had a well-deserved 6-month break. But as far as I know, he was still... he wasn't so much that much of a break, because they came over here to the UK in 94 on an international tour, and I believe The Undertaker was actually part of that international tour, because he was on a Saturday morning TV show promoting the WWF, and so he was off, but he wasn't completely off, if that makes sense. So we're leaving 94. Nothing happened, like I say, at WrestleMania 10. So we're going to WrestleMania 11 now, in 1995, against, of all people, like I say, now The Undertaker was in a rivalry with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Over the summer of 94, Ted DiBiase said that he actually had bought out The Undertaker. So there was a match that went on called The Undertaker versus Undertaker at SummerSlam 94. Please don't go back and see that if you really don't need to. It's not the best either. It's okay, but it's not amazing. As soon as you hear Undertaker versus Undertaker, you kind of think, what the actual hell? But it is what it was. So, like I say, it was a rivalry with Ted DiBiase, and Ted DiBiase had a stable at that point in time called the $1 Million Corporation, and going back to when I said of all people, it was King Kong Bundy. Now, King Kong Bundy, anybody that knows, was one of the big, huge men back in the day, back in the 80s. He was in the main event of WrestleMania 2 for the WWF Championship against Hulk Hogan. So he had a name, King Kong Bundy had a name for himself. And wow, what a size of a guy. Not as big as Yoko, and not the height of Andre, but somewhere in the middle there. And The Undertaker was in his new look. Previous look was all black and grey. New look was all black and purple. And he looked awesome. He looked absolutely awesome. And The Undertaker did win that match. He fought really hard in that match, actually, against King Kong Bundy. And to the point where he actually body slammed King Kong Bundy. Now, The Undertaker is not a small man by any means, right? And you think he ain't getting King Kong Bundy up for a tombstone power driver. Maybe a choke slam, but not a tombstone power driver. So The Undertaker actually body slammed King Kong Bundy right to the mat and pinned him that way. And wow, what a body slam. It was a body, in my opinion, WrestleMania 11 was not the best WrestleMania 11. It was not the best WrestleMania, but that was certainly the best thing that you could see at that WrestleMania, and that was just wow. So leaving 1995, we now go forward to 1996 at WrestleMania 12 against Big Daddy Cool Kevin Nash, aka Diesel. And what this was, those that don't know, or should know, I'm hoping you know this one, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, Razor Ramon and Big Daddy Cool Diesel were leaving the WWF in 1996, going down south to WCW for greener pastures, money, if that makes sense, and so, but nobody knew that at the time, and the Undertaker was going in again in a feud with Kevin Nash, and it was sort of like the two big bulls of the WWF going together. You know, you thought that Kevin Nash is a little bit bigger than the Undertaker. You thought this was it. This was where the winning streak was actually going to end. I mean, Kevin Nash even gave the Undertaker 2 jackknife power bombs. Nobody kicked out of a jackknife power bomb. Okay, nobody ever did that. But the Undertaker didn't kick out. But cocky that Kevin Nash was at the time, he thought he could jackknife powerbomb the Undertaker and just petty pin him. But the Undertaker rose up. Rose after one, rose after the second one. And it was after the second one that Kevin Nash unfortunately ate BS, and the Undertaker ended up tombstoning Kevin Nash. Now, Kevin Nash, like I say, is no small man. The guy is 7 foot, but when the Undertaker tombstoned him, it looked like it put him down to 5'7". In the bird's eye view shot that they do at WrestleMania, where the Undertaker has beaten Kevin Nash, and that was, at that point in time, that was still an amazing victory for the Undertaker, because Kevin Nash was just coming off a year being the WWF champion, and the Undertaker was just sailing that lightning bolt like nothing on earth. So we leave WrestleMania 12 and we go a year later. We go into 1997 at WrestleMania 13. Now, 13 must have been a lucky number for The Undertaker. The reason why I say that is, as I've said in a previous video, you had Psycho Sid, who was the WWF champion at the time, and you had The Undertaker going in as the challenger, and what a match. I mean, yes, it was similar to the previous match the year before at WrestleMania 12 with Kevin Nash, but both of them, both Psycho Sid and The Undertaker, just fit together a lot better, I felt. And the overall match itself was tremendous in my opinion. Excuse me. The two big men were getting aerial, they were taking chances, sometimes unnecessary chances, but chances nevertheless, and it was an amazing match, in my opinion. And at the end of the match, it was, in my opinion, this was long overdue. The Undertaker had won the match, and as I've said before, there is a picture where The Undertaker is posing with the WWF Championship, and it looks amazing. It's an unbelievable picture. It's actually one of my favourite matches of The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and like I say, long overdue title win for The Undertaker. This was his second reign, and it was an amazing match. So leaving WrestleMania 13 here and going a year later into 1998 at WrestleMania 14, we actually have him going against his brother Kane. This was crazy times. There was a storyline previously in '97 where Paul Bearer said that the Undertaker's parents were actually killed by the Undertaker, and it started Kane coming into the picture, and wow, what an amazing storyline. This whole story was unbelievable. It had part one, which was what culminated at WrestleMania 14. It had part two that went on a few years later, and then part three, and it culminated to everything that finished it off. And what a match! What a match! If that match was for the WWF Championship, I feel it would have been more awesome. But they were like two mirror images of each other. And it took The Undertaker 3 tombstones to put Kane away. 3. Not 1, not 2, 3. 3 tombstones. And it was just unbelievable of a match. And even the entrance of The Undertaker to this match as well, it was one of his best entrances ever, where The Undertaker hadn't been seen properly since the Royal Rumble. A few weeks prior that he did come back and challenge Kane for the match at WrestleMania, but they had sent out druids with fire torches in an arch form, and the Undertaker came out in an old school Dracula type robe slash coat, and it just made him look like Dracula on steroids, but in a good way. The entrance was amazing, especially when you see all the old school fans with their lighters going on in the arena, and all the lighting treatment. Oh, it was magical. No, you're not allowed lighters now. It's you've got to use your phone. That's the lighters now. You're not allowed that, but it's unfortunate that they're not allowed to use lighters now, because just the magic of all that entrance. I mean, that was a big part of the match, you know. So we leave crazy times at WrestleMania 14 with The Undertaker winning, and we go a year later into 1999 at WrestleMania 15 against, of all people, the Big Boss Man. I'm going to say that a lot here. Against the Big Boss Man. He had just recently came back throughout 1998 from WCW, and The Undertaker was in a rivalry with Vince McMahon, and it culminated to a Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania. Now, you think that would have been good. The Undertaker had enhanced his Lord of Darkness persona, where, like I say, he had started to become like Dracula on steroids, real evil. He even had a similar beard like this, and it was a really cool look. Unfortunately, the cool look did not match the match that he had. It was not a good day at the office for either guys, and what happened at the end, where they actually hung the Big Boss Man, don't think they would get away with doing that now. And it was, at the time, you just went with it, but when you look back on it now, it's just like, oh, it was a very cringeworthy match, let's say. Neither man's fault. I mean, the Boss Man could work, the Undertaker could work, but just unfortunately, it was not a great day at the office for either of them there. So, leaving 99, The Undertaker was sporting more injuries. So, The Undertaker had actually faded away and going into the year 2000 at WrestleMania 16, the Undertaker was on break again. So over the time of the Undertaker leaving in the fall of 1999 and coming into the year 2000, the Undertaker felt that he needed a change. If he was coming back, he was coming back badder and better than ever. And the only way that the Undertaker felt he could do that was by revamping himself altogether, as in coming away from the dead man, the phenom that he had become, all of it. He done a 180 and a 360 and another 180 again, where he became an extension of himself, the American Badass. And from 2000 to going into WrestleMania 17 in 2001, the American Badass was on fire. It was an amazing ride, no pun intended. But he was going against Triple H. Triple H had just came off a run in 99 and 2000 as the WWF champion. Triple H had said that he had beaten everybody, and the Undertaker stepped up to the plate and said, "Whoa, wait a minute, you've faced me, but you've never beaten me." So that was the Undertaker and Triple H chapter 1. They would have two more chapters for another video. But this match was pretty cool. This was an awesome match. The entrance, another awesome entrance as well. They were in Houston in 2001, and it was near the Undertaker's hometown, and the Undertaker was in his American Badass gimmick, biker gimmick, and he was on the stage on his bike. The Undertaker is revving his bike up like this, and a good bit away from the ring. Okay, so he's like that away from the ring, and the Undertaker just opened his bad boy up and went all the way down the ramp. Cool entrance, awesome entrance. Honestly, check it out. Check out the match itself. What cool that biker entrance made it a cool entrance for the Undertaker, you know. But great match. It could have went either way. You really thought Triple H was gonna win that match, but fortunately, the dead man walking was still walking tall, and came out on top on that one. And that was chapter 1 of their story. Going into a year later, into 2002 of WrestleMania 18, the last WWF WrestleMania, may I add. And the Undertaker actually did not have an opponent this time going into WrestleMania. So a few weeks prior, a month or so prior actually, I should say, the Undertaker actually said, "Why don't I have a match with Ric Flair?" And he asked Ric Flair, and Ric Flair said yes to that, and they had a match. They had a rivalry, they had a match. The Undertaker had extended his American Badass persona, where he introduced a new bit of himself called the Big Evil, and the Undertaker was a dick here. He was being an absolute dick, but it fitted what he was going for. A lot of people don't like the Undertaker during this time, but I do. I loved the Undertaker during this time. I thought it was fun, because he kept saying for 2 years prior that he's being an American badass, and he takes names, you know, beats people up. Whereas now he was actually being cocky about it, and it fit him so very well. and the match itself is actually one of Ric Flair's better matches. Those that don't know or do know that I'm not a huge Ric Flair fan. God forbid that I'm not allowed to be a Ric Flair fan. I'm more of a Randy Savage guy, but that's another video for another time. Yeah, so Ric Flair had a match with The Undertaker, and The Undertaker, of course, won, and this marked the 10-0. Nobody actually had picked up on this. It was a year before at WrestleMania 17 and going into WrestleMania 18 that they turned around to The Undertaker and said, and in fact, I think it was Michael Hayes that picked up on it and said, you know what, you've actually never been defeated at WrestleMania. And The Undertaker going into the match thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And The Undertaker at the end of the match, actually, funny segment there, The Undertaker actually does do the 10 in a row, symbolising that he's never been defeated. So that's pretty awesome. You know, up until that point, The Undertaker hadn't been defeated at WrestleMania. So on the scale number here, on the star number here, just before we finish part 1 here, I'm going to end it with this. WrestleMania 7, as far as match stars concerned, I'm going to give that a 3-star, simply because of how it started out. And going into WrestleMania 8, I'm going to give it a 4-star, just because it's Jake the Snake Roberts. Going into WrestleMania 9, I'm sorry to say I'm giving that a 1-star. Bad match. That's all I'm saying. So a 1-star. WrestleMania 10, no stars there because it never happened. WrestleMania 11, I'm going to give it a 4-star. Just because of the body slam that The Undertaker did to King Kong Bundy. WrestleMania 12, I'm going to give a 4-star against Kevin Nash. Just because, like I say, 2 bulls going at it. And WrestleMania 13, 5-star. Simply 5-star because of him winning the WWF Championship. Going into WrestleMania 14, 5-star. Simply because of the way the match was and how the storyline was. Unbelievable. WrestleMania 15 against the Boss Man, 2-star. Simply because of the bad day at the office. WrestleMania 16, 0 stars because nothing happened that time. WrestleMania 17, 5-star. Great match. Unbelievable match. Go check it out. Go on the network. Check it out. If you want to see the unedited version, pick up WWF WWE Tag Classics or pick up WrestleMania 17 on DVD. Unedited. Amazing match. WrestleMania 18 against Flair, 4 stars. Simply because of the fact that I'm not a Ric Flair fan. Nothing against Ric Flair, just not a Ric Flair fan. And just a 4-star match for The Undertaker overall. So guys, I'm gonna finish it here. This is the end of part 1. I will see you in part 2. Okay? So stay tuned, stay safe, stay awesome, and good journey, guys.